video is a sew along of the Burda November 2020 jumper dress, and if that's of interest to you, please stay tuned. Hi lovely people, this is Josie at It Is Josie. I hope you're doing well. I'm glad to have you here, and for my new subscribers, you're welcome, and for my old subscribers, thank you for tagging along. And if you've been here for a while, 2 weeks ago I did a browse through of the November 2020 Burda style issue, and that was mostly for accountability's sake, and I said I would make a browse through and choose a pattern to sew up from this. And probably if you watched through, you might have noticed that I hinted that I would make one pattern. I was likely to make one particular pattern from this, and yes, I went ahead and sewed up this shirt dress pattern, and that's, I'll make sure I attach the link to the browse through over here, over in the card over here, and in the description box below. And I made this shirt dress, it's number 112. Hope the camera can focus. I just felt like the fabric they used didn't do the dress justice. If you can tell, the funnel neck is drapes, and I wanted this version of it. If you can tell, this is a more stable jersey fabric. I'll try to attach lines drawing. And with this, so this is what inspired me to actually make this jumper dress, and I went ahead and chose a sweatshirting, a brushed sweatshirting fabric. If you can tell, it has some speckles, if you can tell, a few little detailing in the fabric, if the camera can focus. And I picked up this fabric from a local fabric store, that's Fabrics for All. I'm also a blogger with them, so they gifted me this fabric in exchange for review. And this particular fabric came in other colorways where the speckles are more pronounced. You could easily see them. I'll attach the link to this fabric. However, I went for red because Christmas is around the corner, and at least it's the one thing that we know for sure is not taken away from 2020. This side pattern is drafted for sizes 36 to 44. I was in between 36 and 38, and I decided to sew up 36 because it's what mostly fits my bust area, the waist area, and it's over the hips at most times. I moved to 38, and I didn't do much with the length. I used seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch, and because that's what I'm comfortable with. I know Burda advises you to go with 5/8 of an inch, and anything you should know about the magazine patterns don't come with seam allowance. However, if you don't have the magazine, you can still find this pattern on the Burda website. I will attach the particular pattern in the description box below if you would rather just pick that pattern, but I'm afraid that still comes in no seam allowance, but it shouldn't be hard to add on to it. So let's go ahead and I show you how I got along with sewing it up. We are going to go ahead and sew up this jumper dress, and it's dress number 112 from Burda November 2020, and like you've seen, I'm using this gorgeous sweatshirt fabric. It has some speckles, if you can tell, and I got this one from Fabrics for All. They have it in a number of colorways, but I chose red because we are coming to that time of the year, Christmas time, where we all love to wear the reds and the greens. So because I'm going for this, I'm using the sweatshirting fabric because I want that effect. And the only difference I'm making to this pattern, if you can tell, the sleeves have like slits of some sort. I think it's a lot going on there. It's not a lot, it's a smart feature, but I want to make a sweater dress that's functional. So I've gone ahead, when I was tracing out the pattern, at the markings, where we had the markings for the slits, it's at that point that I stopped stressing, and I added just 3/8 of an inch. I actually added 3/8 of an inch everywhere apart from the hemming of the dress. So I just added seam allowance to that, and what I'm going to do once I finish sewing it up, I'll try on the sleeves and I see how much I have to add on to for the band. I'm going to create some cuffings for the arms, but I will use the same fabric to create cuffings, and I'm leaving that to the end, that when I estimate how much extra length I need on my sleeves, it's the amount I'll calculate. I didn't bother cutting them out because I just didn't want to cut off the wrong sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to sew it up. It's actually a simple piece. It comes with just 3 pieces. We've got the sleeves, We've got the front sleeves, the front piece and the back piece, and all these pieces are both cut on the fold, so which is a bonus. So this should come together so fast. I just want to encourage you that this is super easy. Like they said, it's very easy to sew, and I'm going to sew up most of it over my overlocker. However, when I'm hemming the dress, I might go ahead and use my cover stitch machine, but you don't have to worry if you don't own any of those. You can purely sew up this on your sewing machine. And my advice is, if you're sewing a stretch fabric, if you're new to sewing, you use a zigzag stitch. You try out different lengths and widths, and that's what you're going to do. And also you can also use a zigzag stitch or even a twin needle, but because I've got a cover stitch machine, I'll go ahead and use that later. But I went ahead and marked off the fold line of the funnel neck. If you can tell from here, this part turns into a face in the upper part because it will be folded underneath. So the fold line is at that point that you will have to fold it off, iron it flat. However, they ask that you have some strips of interfacing that will stabilize that bit. So I'd gotten some lightweight woven interfacing for that part, but then I've realized it being woven, it won't be able to stretch at all when you're pulling it over your head, because imagine this is what will go over your head. It will be so small, it won't be flexible. So I've instead cut up some knit interfacing. I had an alternative to cut this woven interfacing on the bias because it would give it a little give, but I didn't have loads of it. So I've gone ahead and actually cut out a lighter, it's much lighter compared to this, of stretch interfacing. However, this is the stretch interfacing I've cut out, and I didn't want it, it's not as thick as, this is lightweight woven interfacing, but it's slightly heavier than this. And I realized that this is the grain line, I mean this is a selvage. Along the selvage, I realized it stretches so much and it has little recovery. If you can tell, it puckles up a bit. And then this is against the grain. Against the grain, it still has some stretch, but it's still stable enough. Or the other alternative would have been cutting it on the bias. It still stretches, but it recovers. I decided to cut up strips of 1 inch wide against the grain. It still gives some stretch, but it's still strong at it. I know it folds over itself. I'm going to go ahead and sew the side seams all together. I know this is a curve, and they tell you to clip along the curves, to clip a bit in the curves. That I want to avoid because I want to sew it up on an overlocker. Let me see how I get along, and I'll tell you what to avoid or what to do, because I don't think I want to sew with a sewing machine then go over with an overlocker. So be careful and see if I can skip the part of clipping within the curves. Let me see how I get along, because when I finish that, then I'm going to iron on the interfacing. Let me take you to my sewing machine. Because I'm sewing in the round on this curve forms the funnel neck and the shoulder seams. I'm going to go extremely slowly so I don't cut into the fabric, and also so that I don't skip. And just in case I've not mentioned, I'm using 3/8 of an inch because I know at what point the 3/8 of an inch lands on my overlocker. We've sewn up one side. I'm going to go ahead of camera and sew up the other. I'm going to eliminate the part of clipping into the seams, because should I dare to clip into these seams, I'm likely to get them unraveling, and that's not what we want. So I'll try to manipulate it inside with the flat iron so that I don't have to clip into the seams. I'm going to sew up the other, then I'll show you later. I went ahead and sewed up our side seams. I know as per the instructions, they ask you that you sew and then clip in the make a few clips in the curves so it can easily turn. Unfortunately, I'm not going to do that because I'm using an overlocker. If I had sewn with a sewing machine, it would have given me much more allowance to do that. And off camera, I went ahead and finished the seams, the raw edges of the facing, because it will be inside. So I finished it up with an overlocker, but honestly, if you don't have an overlocker, you can do that with a zigzag stitch, or you can leave it raw or use pinking shears, because this doesn't unravel. Then also, still off camera, I went ahead and attached and on this interfacing. We're using the stretch interfacing, and try to trace over the fold line. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it over. Probably I'll do this step later. I'm going to go ahead, fold it over, and then also what you're asked to do after you folded it over is to stick by hand to iron over to stitch these little bits. I know this is still puckering a bit, it's wavy. I think I need to adjust the tensions in my overlocker, but I could just try to use some invisible stitches and stitch it down to the fabric. So I'll go ahead and stitch it down later. So the next step in the instructions, they are asking us to actually sew the side seams together before we attach the sleeves. That I don't want to do. I don't want to do it that way because I need to ease in the sleeves. What I'm going to do is to attach on the sleeves. Let me see if they fit on nicely without the need to first sew the side seams of the back and the front pieces together. So I'm going to go ahead, attach the sleeves, sew them onto the pattern, but you have to do a lot of easing to make sure that they all fit on right. That's what I'm going to do. And then after I've attached the sleeves, I'll sew the side seams. I'll show you. We've got a notch here which shows us the part of the sleeve head that matches up with this seam. That's the shoulder seam. However, it's important to remember which is your front seam and your back seam. Because this is my front seam, I need actually to first iron this down, make it much more flat. But what I'm going to do, this is the front, so I want to make sure that this seam faces the back. So I'm going to go ahead and attach them. I'm using my clips because a number of times pins have broken my overlocker needles because sometimes I forget to take them out in time. So I'm aligning this, and I'm going to do it to both sleeve sides. And also the front side has another notch, which notch we don't have on the back side. So I'll have to just ease it in nicely. So here I'm aligning the notches for the front side. Yeah, it actually fits, so I can ease it in. So I don't need to fit in the sleeves after sewing up. So this will make it much easier for me. This is a beginner-friendly project, really. If it's your first time sewing something stretchy, this will be a go-to beginner project. Unfortunately, I'm using an overlocker, which a complete beginner might not use. But there are a number of tutorials on how to sew knits with a zigzag stitch. So if you can first watch that, you'll still be able to sew this up. So I've attached the first sleeve on one side, so I'm going to attach also the other, and then sew them all together off camera. Then I'll come back and show you our next step. I've gone ahead and sewed up the sleeves onto the front and the back piece. If you're wondering what this clip for, is to remind me of which is the front piece, because I've not yet marked the ends to show which is the front. I don't use labels because my labels are they're a bit rough. I don't want to use them, so I'll attach a ribbon to the back to remind me. Even adults need reminders, it's not just kids. So I'm going to go ahead and sew up the side seams together. I'm going to put them together, and I'm sewing up from, I'm going to put it together, then I'm going to sew up from the end of the sleeves over here up to the very bottom. Then I'll try on the dress and see how much of the cuff that I'm going to attach to the sleeves, how long I want the cuff to be. So I'm going to go ahead off camera, sew up the side seams. Then I'll come back to you when I've estimated how much of the cuff I want to add onto it. Then I'll show you how I get along with sewing on the cuffs and hemming the bottom, and we shall be done with our top. Then I'll also go ahead and finish up this. So let me go do it. I'm going to attach them off camera. I've got a notch. I didn't have many notches, but I've got a notch on the sides here. I think I didn't transfer it on the other side. That's not a good thing. You shouldn't do that. Shouldn't forget to transfer all the notches. But I'm going to align up all the side seams of the dress part and the sleeves together. Then I sew them together over on my overlocker. Our dress is taking shape. I've sewed the side seams together, and I've also gone ahead and tried on the dress. Yeah, I realized that it's so wide around the side seams. On the side is quite a big dress, so I've marked up inside parts that I have to take in. I'm going to take it in much more at the waist because I want it slightly fitted. I don't want it very loose because I don't plan to wear it with a belt. I like the height, I like the length, but I'm going to take it in on the side, but I'll do that off camera. And I went ahead and I also tried on the sleeves. Like I told you, I've hacked the sleeves. I'm not making the version. If you remember, I said I was not going to sew this slit and let the sleeves have that opening because I know they would be in the way. I want a more functional dress that I can wear quite often with the cold weather. So when I was dressing off, I stopped dressing at that point where at the marking that shows where the split should be. Then I added seam allowance. So I knew from that point I would be able to gauge how much more I needed to add. So I cut my fabric up to that point. So I tried on the dress and I realized that I needed 2.5 more inches to get to this point on my arm, 2.5 inches. So I doubled that. That was 5 inches, and on top of that I added also seam allowance. I'm using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So these are the cuffs I've cut off. So this is the length. When I fold them over, that will be the 2.5 inches plus seam allowance that I need to add on to this. And also how I gauged the width. This is cut on the fold. I measured all around the arm area, but because I'm using the same fabric for cuffing, I didn't want to reduce it a lot more because it's not as stretchy as cuffing or ribbing fabric. So what I've decided to do, I instead got the round measurements, and I got 85% of the equivalent of that. So in other words, I removed just 15% of this total length. Should I call it length? But the distance, I took the measurements in centimeters or inches, whatever you'd love to take, and I found 85%. In other words, this is 15% less than this, because I want it still to be a cuffing that is much more tight around the arm, so it pulls in this fabric. So when I did that, I think all around was about 24 centimeters, and when I removed the 24 centimeters all around, when I found the 85%, I ended up with about 21 centimeters. It was close to 21, it wasn't exactly 21, so I rounded off to 21. Added seam allowance. Since this was on the fold, so I added seam allowance to just one side, which was because I know it will be on the fold and I'm cutting it that way. So I'm going to go ahead. So the cuffings, probably I might do this on camera. So the cuffings closed, fold them over, and then attach them onto the sleeves. We are going to do that on camera. Other cuffs here, I'm going to go ahead, sew them together closed before I can attach them to a sleeve opening, to a sleeve hem. And so we are using 3/8 of an inch on our overlocker. After this, I'm going to go just iron them flat. Just iron them to remove the weaving. If I don't iron them a bit, the weaving will remain. And the fact that I'm going to enclose the seam in, I want it to be neat and flat. I've ironed the cuffings after sewing them together and the seams flat. So now I'm going to attach them onto our sleeves. So I want this seam to face the back, the side seams to face the back. And I'm going to insert them that this is going to go inside. So I'm going to sew on the outside, and I also want to make sure that the inside seams face opposite direction. This seam and the seam on the sleeve, I want them to face opposite directions, because if they're all going to in the same direction, it will cause bulk, because there are already two seams inside here because the fabric is on fold. I would rather have this face the opposite direction. This is our front, so I'm making this go backwards. So I'm going to attach, push it inside, match the side seams together, match the seams together. I'm going to use my clips because this is quite a small area we are working with. So you can't put so many pins, and also pins allow for you to break your needles. So I'm going to just try to stretch it to try and tell which could be the middle point of the cuff that we've created. So it's approximately there. So I'm going to attach another clip over here, and I'm also gauging that that's probably the middle point of the sleeve hem. Okay, so we shall attach it, and this fabric rolls to the right side, as that's which is common to most jerseys. So I'm going to go ahead, use our overlock, and go very slowly because we are sewing in the round, and this is quite so small to put over. Our overlocker here, so we have to sew very carefully. It's quite so small to put over, so we are going to insert this under the presser foot and make sure we don't miss out on all, we don't skip sewing all the three seams together. And we're going to do it much slower. I hope I don't block you, that you'll be able to follow. And while we do that, we are going to try and keep tagging onto the cuff piece. So it's the only piece we shall be stretching, because we realize it's slightly smaller than the sleeve opening. We don't want to stretch the sleeve opening, but only the cuffing. So we shall be tagging onto it a little bit. Make sure you keep aligning them together as you go. We are coming to the end. We are almost at the end. Push the needles down, lift, pull my fabric away if you can tell, put them down again. We've sewn our cuffing on in the round, so I'll show you. Here we go. We have our cuffing on. I'll go ahead and sew up the other side and steam them together, and then at that same point I'll go ahead and sew up the hem. Then I'll show you what it looks like finished. And this is the finished dress. I'm going to go ahead and attach a few images and a clip of this dress on me, and I love how it turned out. I love the funnel neck, it stands straight. And also one other thing I had to do, the pattern asks you to use interfacing, so I used interfacing, but I made sure I used a stretch interfacing, because if you go with a woven, this wouldn't be flexible to go over your head. And I like the way the dress turned out. And another change I made to this pattern, if you can tell, the sleeves, I know you've seen this also in the, if you watch, the sleeves are meant to be They have a slit on the inside, but I knew that was an added detail that would make the dress less functional for me. I love functional clothes. I want simple designs that I don't have to keep for a special occasion. I want something I can wear every day. So I instead hacked it and added cuffs. That's one of the changes I made. I used cuffing, and I explained this all in the tutorial. And I love how it turned out. And also another thing I did, after I'd sewed the side seams, I went ahead and took out a bit at the waistline and the hip because I wanted it more fitted. And I love the overall take on this jumper dress. And this is this time of the year when we are pulling out all the jumper dresses, and with that, you know, you're just wearing one thing, tights and boots. Let me know what you think about this dress. What would you have done differently? Is this something you're interested in, that if I do a browse through a Burda style, I also take you through a sew along of a simple pattern from there? Because actually this is one of the simplest patterns anyone can tackle, because it comes with just 3 pattern pieces. The front bodice and the back pieces come with a funnel neck attachment and the facing only as one piece. And the sleeves, it was a quick make. It only took a while because I was recording a sew along, but it's a pattern that I would use quite more often. And also the fact that if you've gone through the entire hassle of tracing a Burda style magazine, if you don't have an idea of what they look like, you trace it out of a sheet of paper like this. It's not as hard as it looks. It's something that's doable. At first I used to stay away from doing anything with the magazines I was collecting, but once I traced my first pattern, I knew it was something I could easily do. So if I've already traced off one pattern, I could go ahead and sew it up over and over again more times. And this is what I've made. Let me know what you think. Is this something you want me to show you, that when you make a browse through, choose a pattern and sew it together, so that I can inspire you either to pick up the magazine or to pick just that one individual pattern? And this is what I would recommend to a confident beginner, because if you're a complete beginner, sewing jersey fabrics might not be the easiest, but sweatshirting is also a stable one. So any confident beginner can have a go at making this jumper dress. I'm going to show you a clip of this jumper dress and let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe if you're not subscribed to my channel. And while at it, please press the bell icon so YouTube notifies you whenever I upload new videos. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.